Ready.
1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me okay in the back? Yes, it's a small room, so you'll be fine. Just waiting for you to say I'm on Periscope so I can retweet. Yay! Am I notified? Yay! Look at that. Woohoo! Retweet and bam. Great, let's shut down Twitter. Alright. Cool. So believe it or not, this is my first MeasureCamp ever. So I've been on the circuit for quite a few years, but this is my first time because I have a life on Saturdays. But this time around, I made an exception. Great. So again, it's always a bit difficult to go after Simo and his stellar fame, but here we go anyway. So this is me in a few words. So I've been around for way too many years. The thing I like to mention is that I'm both a consultant in a company that just got acquired by Orange, and also the head of product for HubScan, which is a tag quality assurance system. I've done a couple of like training DVDs and whatnot. Anyway, yeah, KPI therapist is in one word, not two. Right. Today I'd like to, and again, I was pressured into doing this talk today. I had no plans whatsoever. So this is a deck I just put together in a couple of minutes. Well, maybe a couple more, but anyway, the goal is to describe what I've been doing a lot as like an analytics manager for like big brands worldwide. See how you roll out big projects and what are the main things to look into before you start committing analytics suicide. So the points we're going to go through here, and again I apologize, this is going to be very much a bullet point format, but let's bear with me. And I mean there's a bear with me in the room. So these are the points we're going to go over. So the main points are going to be the purpose, guidelines, governance, streamlining, implementation, quality assurance, adapting business processes, training, and actually using the data. And eventually profit, maybe, we'll see. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about purpose. Well, actually, no. These things are really very cyclical, so it doesn't work with a cycle. Perhaps so I have to put them in a snake form. But yeah, essentially, it's not a fixed process. It's a living thing, but at the same time, it's going to be very, very monolithic in structure. So we'll see how this works. So the purpose is normally the question you're supposed to answer about why do you have a website? Why do you have a digital structure that powers your activities? If you can't answer the question in 30 seconds or less, you have not thought out why you have a digital platform. So the purpose is also what is going to define your objectives and your goals. If you don't know the difference, raise your hand. Good. So objectives and goals. So being able to define your goals properly at the top level is always a good idea. The examples I'm going to take, and I'm not going to show them, I'm allowed to talk about them, are going to be companies like HP, L'Oreal, Chanel, other big companies like Peugeot and Citroën, for instance. These are like the major projects that I work with, and these brands usually deploy projects across multiple brands, multiple countries, multiple markets, multiple devices. So the purpose becomes a bit blurred sometimes, but at the same time you need to have something common for so that everyone can compare brand against country, for instance. Rough night last night. The guidelines is, and the reason why I was saying it's bad and good to go after Simo is that the guidelines are essentially your specification, and they have to be fairly formal, fairly extensive, and unfortunately they're going to be one big waterfall. So in some respects, like the bigger the project, the less agile it becomes when it's defined. Doesn't mean that you can decline each of the steps or each of the building blocks as more agile projects, but as it goes, you need to have some common ground that is very, very fixed. For instance, If you're going to be building a measurement plan, you have to make sure that you understand that each country, each brand, each whatever, is only allowed to track such or such thing in such or such format. Because at the end of the day, we're going to do roll-up reporting, and when you have to consolidate all that data, they need to be, you know, not oranges and apples, but at least oranges and tangerines, you know, same shape, same color, you know, some of your seeds. But the goal is really to have a unified data structure. Because that data structure means, if you paid attention, that, you know, these are going to help define the data you need for purpose. Why do you have a website? What data do I need? And so moving on from the guidelines, actually, you know, there's a document circulating at L'Oreal right now called the Doctrine, which I like to call the Bible as well. It's really the major tagging plan we use for all countries, all brands, all subdivisions, all, and that is a document that's currently being implemented over GTM and GA 360 across all countries, and it is a job that hadn't been done before. Or rather, let's say the previous agency had locked the customer in a custom GTM implementation with no coherence across countries and markets. So they had to, well, actually, we had to come in and change the entire GTM structure, but that meant redoing the tagging plan from scratch, the global tagging plan. So I fortunately had experience with this, you know, with countries like brands like HP, when we had to roll out 42 countries in 2 months. That was fun. L'Oreal is and Peugeot and other brands, they're a more lengthy process, but at the same time, they expect that to take a bit of time. So the guidelines help. They help at least making sure everyone is doing the same thing, so that at the end of the day, they can compare their data. And there's governance, yes. So governance essentially means that someone is in charge, and that normally means that you have a sponsor. It's like AA, you go to a meeting and you have a sponsor. The sponsor is both someone who's going to say, hey, look, I'm above you in the food chain, so I'm going to be able to enforce the rules and enforce the fact that you're setting up the guidelines properly. And actually that sponsor needs to be committed enough to show up to these stand-up meetings. And like I was joking on Twitter with Simo, a stand-up meeting in Agile is often a meeting where you get stood up. People don't show up. So nothing progresses in any way. So governance is important because it also means that you define both a project management and an accountability chain per country, per etc., with someone at the central level that gets to coordinate everything. Oh wait, I escaped. Wrong button. Actually, you know, see, that's a good example here. Good segue. What you see on the left here on my screen is, let's see, do I have a laser here? Yeah. So this here is like the tagging plan for that, you know, brand, or you worth it. So that's the basis for the tagging plan, and that goes on and on because it's a GA360. Where's my cursor? There. So as you can see, there's quite a bit. So normally, you know, when like marketers say, I want to try like 200 different variables, and say, no, I'll come over to your house and shoot you.
Not trusted because we have this BI reports and so on and so forth.
What I've seen from experience that we include these guys early on in the definition phase, so they contribute to what they want to collect. That means that they feel less alienated when the project rolls out, and hey, that's not what I asked for, or hey, that's not data I can use or even connect in my DMP or whatnot. Yes, the earlier you include IT in the process, or IT or analysts or the more technical types, because they'll have the most requirements, they'll have the most constraints. So these guys need to be included early on in the process. Sir?
Do you also, you mentioned
Yes.
training the analyst? You mentioned training the analyst. Do you also make a lot of effort to train the people who will develop further the different websites where you're implementing your tool? Because I often have the problem that we do some super nice plan, do a nice implementation, and 6 months later, some engineer somewhere changed something that breaks the whole thing?
I think we're still very much in a phase where, and despite it being 2018, developers are clueless when it comes to what the website is for and what sort of implications it might have for business. They're very much disconnected from what the marketing team does. So, in a sense, I'm not just saying they're just developers, but they lack the culture and baggage to understand what's at stake for whoever is ordering the website from them. In the case of purely technical agencies, they should be a lot more proactive and saying, "Hey, we now have experience with building websites that that take tracking into account. We should be able to help you with this, and that." And we unfortunately still don't see that in 2018. So the training can, yes, definitely go with the agencies, but frankly, that should be their job to do their homework.
I was curious if you had to take it.
No. Again, the stick and the carrot works there too, because you're telling the agency, look, we're going to be super serious about data collection. You're supposed to be ready to be helping us build the data layer. I mean, I have a customer who's taken 1 year to build a data layer that was like a super simple specification, and they're still not done yet. Anna. And sorry, I had a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up, please?
Sorry. Do you simplify the list of data points if you think they're unlikely to have the resource, and will you strip back at times if you don't think they're going to be capable of managing that many in the long run?
Yes. So in that respect, when you do the specification, when you do the big definition of your measurement plan, either you start with the assumption that yes, this is where we want to be down the line, but we're very aware that the developers have either that much bandwidth to generate this and this data point. So yes, let's start with this. And in that respect, we can totally be agile and say, hey, we're going to do this by chunks. And but of course, every time the client wants it to be done perfectly in one go, and in some respect, back to SEMO and Agile, yes, doing it in chunk, doing it in phases, sometimes makes sense. And the issue I have with that is that many times there are dependencies involved that break the whole process, and it's sometimes easier to do a whole bunch than just doing little chunks.
That's about the end of the session.
Cool. So we're done. Thank you.